A Vampire Romance, written by Amelia Hart. Chapter 1. When Shadows Notice. The rain hammered against the windows of Ember's diner at 11:34 p.m. on a Tuesday that felt more like punishment than a shift. Nora Hayes wiped down table 6 for the third time that hour, her hands moving in circles that had become automatic after 2 years of this work. The coffee stains never fully disappeared from the white laminate, no matter how hard she scrubbed. Her feet ached. The kind of deep, bone-tired ache that came from standing for 16 hours straight. 3 times a week she pulled these extended shifts, stacking hours on top of hours until the numbers in her bank account crawled closer to what she needed. $3,200 every month. That was what the Meadowbrook Assisted Living Facility cost for her grandmother Martha's care. It was worth it. Every blister, every skipped meal, every night she fell into bed too exhausted to dream. Martha was the only family she had left. The door chimed. Nora looked up from the table, already reaching for her order pad out of habit. 3 men stumbled through the entrance, bringing the smell of rain and something sharper. Alcohol. Cheap beer and cheaper whiskey mixing into a cloud that made her stomach turn. She recognized the one in front immediately. Recognition hit her chest with the force of a fist. Owen Fletcher, 28 years old. Blonde hair darkened by rain. Blue eyes that had once made her feel special, and now only made her feel small. He'd gained weight since she'd last seen him 9 months ago. His jaw was softer, his shoulders less defined under the soaked jacket. But his hands were the same. Large, strong, capable of breaking things. She'd learned that the hard way. Nora. His voice carried across the diner, too loud for the late hour. The elderly trucker at the counter looked up from his pie. The couple in booth 3 paused their quiet conversation. Nora's hand tightened on the rag. "Owen, you should leave." "Come on, baby." He moved closer, his friends trailing behind him. Both were men she vaguely recognized from his construction crew. Broad shoulders, hard expressions, the kind of loyalty that came from shared bottles and shared prejudices. "I just want to talk. That's all. Just talk." June emerged from behind the counter, her red curls escaping from the bun she'd pinned them in hours ago. At 58, the diner's owner had seen enough trouble to recognize it the moment it walked through her door. "Son, I think the lady asked you to leave." Owen ignored her. His eyes stayed fixed on Nora, tracking her as she backed toward the kitchen. "You won't return my calls. You blocked my number. What am I supposed to do? I love you. We just had a fight, that's all. Couples fight. We're not a couple." Nora kept her voice steady even as her pulse hammered in her throat. "We haven't been for 9 months. Please go. 9 months. Owen laughed, but there was nothing warm in the sound. 9 months you've been ignoring me. Like I'm nothing. Like what we had meant nothing. What they'd had. 3 years of walking on eggshells. 3 years of apologizing for things that weren't her fault. 3 years of making herself smaller, quieter, more invisible, hoping that if she just did everything right, he wouldn't get angry. And then the night he'd grabbed her wrist during an argument about dishes and twisted until something cracked. The emergency room doctor had asked twice if she wanted to file a report. She'd said no both times. Owen's father owned half the construction contracts in the city. She was a waitress who could barely afford rent. The system wasn't built for people like her. "I need to get back to work." She tried to move past him toward the kitchen. His hand shot out, fingers closing around her upper arm. Not hard enough to bruise. Not yet, but firm enough to stop her movement. Firm enough to send ice flooding through her veins. "We're not done talking. Let go." Her voice came out smaller than she wanted. "Just give me 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking." His breath smelled sour, fermented. His pupils were dilated, unfocused, drunk. He was drunk, which made everything worse. Drunk. Owen didn't listen to reason. Drunk. Owen didn't stop. His friends had positioned themselves between the counter and the booths, casual but deliberate, blocking June's line of sight, making it look accidental, making it look innocent. "Please." Nora tried to pull away. His grip tightened. Red marks were already forming under his fingers, angry welts against her pale skin. Owen, you're hurting me. Am I? He leaned closer, and she smelled the whiskey stronger now, mixed with his cologne and sweat. You hurt me for 9 months. You think that doesn't count? He pulled. Not toward the door, toward the back of the diner, toward the narrow hallway that led to the bathrooms and the storage closet. By the time the city swallowed them, Ezra's gloved hands had begun to shake. The sun had found every seam, wrists, the strip of throat above the scarf, and left its signature in raw, blistering heat. He kept his voice even anyway. Are you hurt? He asked, as if pain were something that only ever belonged to other people. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting stuttering shadows on the checkered floor. Nora's sneakers squeaked against the linoleum as he dragged her backward. She tried to dig her heels in, tried to resist, but Owen outweighed her by 70 pounds of muscle earned from years of construction work. Her heart slammed against her ribs. The couple in booth 3 was looking down at their plates now, deliberately not seeing. The trucker had turned back to his pie. Nobody helped. Nobody ever helped. The hallway swallowed them, dimmer and quieter than the main room. The smell of industrial cleaner mixed with old grease. Owen's fingers were brands on her arm, burning through the thin fabric of her uniform. Stop. She tried to make her voice sharp, authoritative. It came out as a whisper. Stop it right now. Or what? Owen's free hand went to the wall beside her head, caging her in. You'll call the cops? Tell them what? That your boyfriend wanted to talk to you? That I bought you flowers and you threw them in the trash? Who do you think they'll believe, Nora? Me or you? The door to the diner opened again. The chime seemed impossibly loud in the tense silence. Footsteps crossed the floor, steady and unhurried. Expensive shoes on cheap tile. I believe the lady asked you to stop. The voice came from behind Owen, low and controlled. Each word precisely articulated, carrying an accent that suggested old money and older breeding. British, maybe. Or something close to it. Owen's head turned. Nora looked past his shoulder and saw the man who'd been sitting in the back booth for the last 40 minutes. She'd noticed him when he first arrived. Hard not to. He wore a suit that probably cost more than her car. Black on black with a crisp white shirt underneath. His hair was dark, long enough to brush his shoulders, pushed back from a face that could have been carved from marble. Sharp cheekbones, strong jaw, pale skin that looked like it had never seen sunlight. But it was his eyes that stopped her breath. Silver. Actually silver. Catching the weak fluorescent light and throwing it back in shades of mercury and steel. This doesn't concern you. Owen's voice had gone harder, territorial. His hand stayed on Nora's arm. This is between me and my girlfriend. I'm not your girlfriend, Nora managed. The stranger moved closer. Not fast, not threatening. Just a smooth glide that ate up the distance between them. When he stopped, he was close enough that Nora could smell his cologne. Something expensive and subtle. Cedar and smoke. Remove your hand, the stranger said. It wasn't a request. Or what? Owen straightened to his full height, 6 feet of alcohol-fueled bravado. You gonna make me? The stranger's hand settled on Owen's shoulder. His fingers looked relaxed, almost gentle, but Owen's face went white. His mouth opened in a soundless gasp, and his hand fell away from Nora's arm like someone had cut the tendons. Walk away, the stranger said quietly. Now. Owen stumbled backward, cradling his shoulder. Confusion and pain warred on his face, mixing with the beginnings of fear. Something primal had recognized the threat, even if his alcohol-soaked brain couldn't process it fully. You can't, Owen started, then stopped. The stranger hadn't moved, hadn't raised his voice, hadn't done anything overtly aggressive. But the air in the hallway had changed. Grown colder. Heavier. The fluorescent lights buzzed louder, as if responding to some frequency Nora couldn't hear. Owen backed up another step. Then another. His friends appeared at the end of the hallway, drawn by some instinct that sensed their leader in trouble. But when they saw the stranger, they stopped too. Frozen like rabbits that had spotted a wolf. The stranger's eyes never left Owen's face, silver reflecting in the dim light, unblinking, inhuman in their intensity. Owen turned and ran. Actually ran, his friends scrambling after him. The door chimed as they burst through it, disappearing into the rain and the night. Through the window, Nora saw them pile into Owen's truck, tires squealing as they peeled out of the parking lot. Silence fell over the diner. The trucker went back to his pie. The couple resumed their conversation in hushed tones. June stood behind the counter, one hand on the phone, the other over her heart. Nora leaned against the wall, legs shaking so badly she wasn't sure they'd hold her weight. The stranger stepped back, giving her space. His expression had softened from whatever terrifying thing it had been moments ago. "Are you hurt?" His voice had lost its edge, becoming almost gentle. Nora looked down at her arm. Red fingerprints stood out against her skin, already darkening to purple at the edges. They'd bruised by morning. Add to the collection of marks that Owen had left on her body over 3 years. Most had faded. Some never really did. "I'm fine." The lie was automatic. "Thank you. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't." "Yes, you do." He said it simply, stating a fact rather than making an accusation. She did. She knew exactly what would have happened. The same thing that always happened with Owen when he got like this. Anger, apologies, promises to change. The cycle that never ended, just paused. The stranger turned and walked back toward his booth. Nora followed on unsteady legs, drawn by something she couldn't name. Gratitude, maybe. Or curiosity about the man who'd made Owen Fletcher run. He slid into the worn vinyl seat with economical grace. The cup of coffee sat in front of him, still full, no steam rising from the surface. It had gone cold hours ago, yet he'd sat there anyway, one hand curved around the ceramic, watching. "Can I get you anything else?" Nora asked, falling back on the familiar script of customer service. It was easier than thinking about what had just happened. "No." He glanced at her, those strange silver eyes tracking across her face. Assessing, she thought. Looking for damage. "But you should sit. You're trembling." She was. Her whole body was shaking now that the adrenaline had started to fade. She slid into the opposite side of the booth without being asked twice. Unprofessional, maybe, but June wouldn't mind. "I'm Nora," she said. "Nora Hayes." Ezra. He didn't offer a last name. They sat in silence. Outside, the rain continued its assault on the windows, turning the parking lot into a black mirror. The neon sign flickered. Ember's Diner in red letters that bled into the darkness. Ezra's hand was still on the coffee cup. Nora noticed that his fingernails were immaculate, buffed and clean. Not like Owen's, which were always rimmed with dirt from the construction sites. These were the hands of someone who'd never done manual labor in his life. "Thank you," she said again, because it felt like it needed to be said twice. "Really, thank you. You don't need to thank me for basic decency." He leaned back, and the overhead light caught his face at a new angle. God, he was handsome. Inhumanly so. The kind of beautiful that belonged on screens or in magazines, not in a rundown diner at midnight on a Tuesday. June appeared at the edge of the table, coffee pot in hand. "You okay, honey?" Nora nodded. "I'm fine, June. That boy shows up again, I'm calling the police. I don't care who his daddy is." June's jaw was set, her eyes fierce. "You hear me?" "I hear you." June refilled Nora's cup even though she hadn't been drinking coffee, then moved on to check the other tables. The couple in booth 3 paid their bill and left, murmuring to each other. The trucker followed a few minutes later. Ezra stood, reaching into his jacket. He pulled out a leather wallet and extracted several bills. When he set them on the table, Nora saw they were 50s. 5 of them. That's too much. She pushed them back toward him. "Your coffee was $4. Consider the rest a tip for excellent service." He buttoned his jacket, adjusting the cuffs of his shirt. Everything about him was precise, controlled. A man who didn't do anything without intention, and perhaps a small compensation for the trouble. "I can't accept this." "You can, you will." It wasn't arrogant, just matter of fact. He moved toward the door, then paused, looked back at her over his shoulder. "Take care of yourself, Nora Hayes." Then he was gone, disappearing into the rain and the darkness. Through the window, she saw a black car pull up, sleek and expensive. A driver held the door open. Ezra slid into the back seat with the same grace he'd shown in the diner, and the car vanished into the night. Nora looked down at the money on the table. $250. Enough to buy groceries for the week. Enough to put a dent in the electric bill that was already 2 weeks overdue. She picked up the bills with shaking hands and tucked them into her apron pocket. Outside, the storm raged on. But inside Ember's diner, for the first time in hours, Nora felt warm. Chapter 2. Silver in the Shadows. Ezra Volkov returned to Ember's diner the next night at precisely 11:34 p.m. He took the same booth in the back corner, ordered the same black coffee, and left the same untouched cup growing cold on the table when he departed 90 minutes later. Nora noticed. The night after that, he returned again. Same time, same booth, same coffee. This time he stayed for 2 hours, reading a book with a leather cover so old the title had worn away. His fingers turned the pages with careful precision, as if the paper might disintegrate under rougher handling. She found herself watching him when she thought he wouldn't notice. The way he sat perfectly still for minutes at a time, barely breathing. The way his eyes tracked her movements across the diner with an attention that should have felt predatory, but somehow didn't. The way other customers gave his booth a wide berth without seeming to realize they were doing it, as if their subconscious recognized something their conscious mind couldn't process. On the third night, she finally worked up the courage to approach him directly. Her hands were steadier than they'd been since Tuesday. The bruises on her arm had faded from purple to yellow-green, barely visible under her long-sleeved uniform. "You've been coming here a lot," she said, refilling the coffee he wouldn't drink. Ezra looked up from his book. Those silver eyes caught the fluorescent light, throwing it back at her in shades of mercury. "The atmosphere suits me. The atmosphere." Nora glanced around the diner. The cracked vinyl booths, the flickering neon sign, the coffee that tasted like burned plastic. Most people come here because it's cheap, or because they're desperate. Perhaps I'm both. A slight smile touched his lips, gone so quickly she might have imagined it. She wanted to ask more. Where he was from, why his coffee always went cold, why he'd helped her when nobody else would. But June called her name from across the diner, and the moment passed. When she brought Ezra's check an hour later, she found 5 crisp $50 bills on the table. Again. "This is too much," she said for the third time in 3 nights. "Consider it an investment," he replied, closing his book. "In the continued excellence of Ember's diner, we both know the food here is terrible. Perhaps, but the company is exceptional." He left before she could respond, disappearing into the night in that black car with the silent driver. Thursday morning arrived with exhaustion clinging to Nora's bones. She'd worked a double shift, 16 hours of slinging coffee and deflecting wandering hands from drunk truckers. Her feet screamed with each step as she pushed through the diner's back exit at 5:47 a.m. The sky was still dark, caught in that strange liminal space between night and dawn. Streetlights buzzed overhead, attracting clouds of moths. The parking lot was empty except for her ancient Honda and the bus stop half a block away. She almost didn't see Owen until he stepped into her path. "Nora, wait." Her body reacted before her brain caught up. Heart slamming against her ribs, hands curling into fists, every muscle tensing for flight. But Owen wasn't drunk this time. He was sober, clean-shaven, wearing a button-up shirt she'd bought him for his birthday 2 years ago, holding flowers. Pink roses, her favorite, wrapped in plastic from the 24-hour grocery store. "Please." He held the bouquet toward her. "Just hear me out." "No." She tried to step around him. He moved with her, blocking her path. "I know I messed up the other night. I was drunk. I wasn't thinking straight." His voice was calm, reasonable. The voice he used when he wanted something. "I'm sorry, baby. You know I'd never hurt you when I'm sober." The lie was so practiced she almost believed it herself for a moment. But her wrist remembered. The bone had healed crooked, aching when the weather changed. He'd been stone-cold sober that night too. "I have to catch my bus." She clutched her purse tighter, keys threaded between her fingers the way June had taught her. Makeshift brass knuckles. "I'll drive you home. We can talk." Owen reached for her. "Don't touch me. Come on, Nora. People are watching." He gestured to the street, where early morning commuters were beginning to appear. An elderly woman walking her dog. A jogger in reflective gear. Don't make a scene. Just take the flowers and let me apologize properly. Her bus appeared at the corner, lumbering toward the stop. Freedom. Escape. She tried to move past Owen again. His hand shot out, closing around her wrist. The left one. The one he'd broken. His grip was firm, just shy of painful, his thumb pressing directly on the spot where the bone had fractured. A reminder. A threat wrapped in a smile. "Let go," she said through gritted teeth. "Not until you listen." His voice stayed level, pleasant. To anyone watching, they looked like a couple having a quiet disagreement. No raised voices, no visible violence. "I love you. I've always loved you. We can work through this. All couples fight." The bus pulled up to the stop. The doors hissed open. Nora tried to pull free. Owen's grip tightened incrementally, pain blooming sharp and bright up her arm. "Sir, you need to let the lady board." The bus driver leaned out, eyebrows drawn together in concern. "Just a minute," Owen called back, smile never wavering. "We're finishing a conversation." 2 blocks away, Ezra Volkov felt it. The fear hit him like a physical blow, sharp and sudden. It crawled under his skin, set his teeth on edge, made something ancient and predatory wake in his chest. For a moment, he didn't understand what he was feeling. He'd spent 4 centuries learning to control his instincts, to separate himself from the vampiric hunger that drove younger members of his kind to madness. This wasn't hunger. This was something else entirely. A connection he hadn't meant to forge, pulling taut between him and a human waitress who'd served him coffee 3 nights in a row. He'd been returning from a meeting with the vampire who controlled the territory north of the city. Tedious negotiations about hunting grounds and blood supplier contracts, the kind of politics that made up most of his existence now. He'd dismissed his driver 6 blocks from the diner, preferring to walk the last stretch. Dawn was still 30 minutes away. Time enough. The fear slammed into him, and Ezra moved. He crossed 2 city blocks in 15 seconds, using speed that would have been invisible to human eyes. Through alleys, over a chain-link fence, across a parking lot. The world blurred around him, colors smearing into abstract streaks. The bus stop materialized in front of him. He forced himself to slow, to appear human, breathing heavily as if he'd been jogging, approaching at a normal pace. The scene registered instantly. Owen Fletcher, hand wrapped around Nora's wrist. Her face pale, tight with suppressed pain. The bus driver watching uncertainly. Witnesses maintaining careful distance, not wanting to get involved. "Good morning, Nora." Ezra's voice cut through the tension. He didn't look at Owen, directing all his attention to her. "I apologize for being late. The meeting ran longer than expected." Relief flooded her face. "Ezra, who the hell are you?" Owen demanded. Recognition dawned slowly. "Wait, you're the guy from the diner." Ezra finally turned his gaze to Owen. He cataloged every detail with the precision of a predator assessing prey. Height, 6 feet. Weight, approximately 200 pounds. Eye color, blue. Scar on his left cheekbone, old, from a bar fight if the shape was any indication. Vehicle registration, the truck parked across the street, license plate visible. Scent, cheap cologne over unwashed skin, adrenaline, the particular chemical signature of human aggression. He would remember everything, every detail, every marker that could be used to find this man again. "Release her," Ezra said quietly. "This is between me and my girlfriend." Owen's hand stayed on Nora's wrist. "Mind your own business." "I'm not your girlfriend," Nora said. Ezra took 1 step closer, just 1. But something in his posture changed. Some subtle shift in the way he held himself that made Owen's hindbrain scream danger. The smile fell away from the human's face, replaced by something uncertain. "The bus is waiting," Ezra continued in that same soft tone. "Nora needs to board. You need to leave. These are not suggestions." Owen's mouth opened, closed. His grip on Nora's wrist loosened incrementally. The flowers dropped from his other hand, scattering across the sidewalk in an explosion of pink petals. "This isn't over," Owen said, but he was backing away now, retreating. You can't hide behind your rich boyfriend forever, Nora. He turned and walked toward his truck, movements jerky with suppressed anger. The engine roared to life. Tires squealed as he pulled away. Nora sagged against the bus stop shelter, cradling her wrist. Thank you. Again. I'm sorry you keep having to rescue me. Don't apologize. Ezra's voice had gentled. That man is dangerous. I know. Her laugh was bitter. I lived with him for 3 years. I know exactly how dangerous Owen Fletcher is. The bus driver cleared his throat. Lady, you getting on or not? Nora fumbled for her fare card, hands shaking. Ezra watched her board, watched the bus pull away from the curb. Through the window, he saw her find a seat near the back, saw her lean her head against the glass, eyes closed, exhaustion written in every line of her body, something twisted in his chest, an emotion he'd thought long dead, buried under 4 centuries of carefully maintained distance from humanity. He pulled out his phone as he walked back toward his penthouse. The sun would rise soon. He needed to be behind protective glass before the first rays touched the horizon. But there was time enough for one call. Vincent answered on the first ring. My lord, the negotiations went well, I trust? I need you to compile information on someone. Everything. Background, employment history, criminal record, known associates, financial status. Ezra rattled off Owen Fletcher's name, the truck's license plate, every detail he'd memorized. Silence on the other end of the line. Then, this is about the human woman. This is about a threat that needs to be assessed. With respect, my lord, we've never investigated humans for personal reasons before. The risk of exposure. I'm aware of the risks. Ezra stopped at the corner, watching the sky lighten from black to deep blue. Have the information on my desk by sunset tomorrow. As you wish. Vincent paused. Should I be concerned about this attachment? Ezra thought of silver eyes meeting honey-colored ones across a diner booth. Thought of purple bruises fading on pale skin. Thought of fear that tasted like copper and desperation on the back of his tongue. No, he lied. It's merely due diligence. He ended the call as the first hint of gold touched the eastern sky. The penthouse was 6 blocks away. He made it with 3 minutes to spare, the steel door sealing shut, just as dawn broke over the city. In the darkness of his chamber, Ezra lay still and considered what he'd done. Vampires didn't intervene in human affairs. They observed, they hunted when necessary. They maintained the careful balance between species that kept their existence hidden. They didn't track down abusive ex-boyfriends. They didn't feel human fear like a knife to the heart. They didn't develop attachments. Across the city, Nora Hayes walked into her small apartment, dead-bolted the door behind her, and checked every window lock twice. The sun was rising, painting her walls in shades of pink and gold. She stood in the bathroom looking at her reflection, at the finger-shaped marks already forming on her wrist. Tomorrow she'd visit her grandmother Martha. Sunday visits were sacred, the one constant in a life that felt increasingly unstable. She'd need to ask June about switching her shift. The thought exhausted her. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Stay away from him. He can't protect you. I always find you. Oh. Nora deleted the message, then blocked the number. It wouldn't stop Owen. Nothing ever did, but it was something. A small act of defiance. She fell into bed still wearing her uniform, too tired to change. Outside her window, the city woke to another ordinary Thursday. But for a vampire king lying in darkness 6 miles away, and a waitress who smelled like coffee and courage, nothing about this Thursday felt ordinary at all. Chapter 3. The Weight of Watching. Vincent delivered the file 48 hours after Ezra's request. A leather portfolio, plain and unmarked, containing 37 pages of information that painted a picture uglier than Ezra had anticipated. Owen Fletcher. 28 years old, supervisor at Fletcher Construction, a company owned by his father Gerald, who controlled approximately 40% of the commercial building contracts in the metropolitan area. 2 previous relationships that had ended with restraining orders. Both cases settled out of court with confidential agreements and sealed records. 3 workplace assault complaints, all dismissed after the victims suddenly withdrew their statements. Money bought silence. Influence bought protection. The photographs were worse. Hospital records from Nora's emergency room visit 9 months ago. X-rays showing a fractured radius. The attending physician's notes included phrases that made Ezra's jaw tighten. Patient reluctant to provide details. Injury inconsistent with stated cause. Suspected domestic violence. He closed the file and looked at Vincent, who stood in the penthouse office with his hands clasped behind his back. The older vampire's expression revealed nothing, but Ezra could sense his disapproval radiating through their centuries-old connection. "And the woman?" Ezra asked. "Nora Hayes, 24. Works at Ember's Diner, 40 to 50 hours weekly, depending on shift availability. Enrolled in online nursing courses at the community college. Lives alone in a studio apartment on the east side. Rent $1,400 monthly. No criminal record. No outstanding debts beyond student loans." Vincent paused. "She visits Meadowbrook Assisted Living every Sunday. Her grandmother, Martha Hayes, age 79, diagnosed with early-stage dementia. Monthly care costs $3,200. Ezra did the mathematics instantly. Nora was barely surviving. Working herself into exhaustion to keep her grandmother in decent care while pursuing an education that might offer her a better future. No family support. No safety net. Just determination and the kind of stubborn courage that refused to break even when everything else did. "You've been watching her," Vincent said. It wasn't a question. "I've been observing a situation. My lord, with respect, this is dangerous. Attachment to humans leads to complications we cannot afford. The covenant exists for reasons that transcend personal interest. I'm aware of the covenant." Ezra stood, moving to the window that overlooked the city. 40 stories below, humans lived and died in the span of an eye blink. He'd watched civilizations rise and fall, empires crumble, languages evolve and disappear. 412 years had taught him the futility of caring about any single human life, except he couldn't stop thinking about honey-colored eyes and bruises shaped like fingerprints. "Continue monitoring the situation," he said. "I want to know everywhere Owen Fletcher goes, everyone he talks to. If he approaches Nora again, I need to know immediately." Vincent bowed and departed, his disapproval hanging in the air like smoke. Nora noticed the black car on Tuesday evening when she left for her shift. It was parked across from her apartment building, engine off. Windows tinted dark enough to hide whoever sat inside. She recognized it from somewhere, but couldn't place where until she remembered. The diner, the night Ezra had first helped her. She should have felt afraid. Should have called the police or at least told June. Instead, she felt something she hadn't experienced in 3 years. Safe. Wednesday. The car was at the bus stop when she finished her shift at 2:30 a.m., just sitting there, unobtrusive, watching. She stood on the corner for a moment, keys threaded between her fingers, waiting to feel threatened. The feeling never came. Thursday morning, she saw it outside the pharmacy where she picked up her grandmother's medications. The driver never emerged, never approached, just observed from a distance that suggested protection rather than threat. Owen, meanwhile, escalated. Flowers appeared at the diner 3 times that week. Pink roses that June threw in the dumpster without asking. Text messages flooded Nora's phone from numbers she didn't recognize, each one blocked only to be replaced by another. "I love you. I'm sorry. We belong together. You're making a mistake." He showed up at the grocery store where she shopped on Wednesday afternoon, following her through the aisles, maintaining a careful distance that couldn't legally be called harassment, but felt like violation anyway. "Just talk to me," he called across the produce section. Other shoppers pretended not to hear. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. She abandoned her cart and left through the back entrance, calling a rideshare to take her home. $30 she couldn't afford, but cheaper than another confrontation. Sunday morning arrived with exhaustion clinging to her bones. She'd barely slept, jumping at every sound in her apartment, checking door locks compulsively. But Sunday was sacred. Sunday was Martha. Meadowbrook Assisted Living sat on the northern edge of the city, a sprawling facility that tried to disguise its institutional nature with gardens and cheerful paint colors. Nora signed in at the desk, smiled at the nurses she'd come to know over the past year, and made her way to room 247. Martha was having a good day. Her gray hair had been brushed and pinned back, and she sat in the chair by the window, watching birds at the feeder outside. When Nora knocked softly on the doorframe, her grandmother's face lit up with recognition. "Nora, my sweet girl." "Hi, Grandma." Nora kissed her cheek, pulling up the visitor's chair. "How are you feeling?" "Better now that you're here." Martha's hands were thin, veined, and spotted with age, but her grip was strong when she took Nora's fingers in hers. "You look tired. Are you working too much?" "Just the usual." Nora forced brightness into her voice. "School's going well. I'm doing clinicals next semester." "A nurse. Your mother would be so proud." Martha's eyes went distant for a moment, lost in memories of a daughter dead 15 years. Then she focused again. "Are you eating enough?" "You're too thin." "I'm fine, Grandma. Promise." They talked for an hour. Martha told stories Nora had heard 100 times before, about Nora's childhood and her mother's youth and the husband Martha had lost to cancer 20 years ago. Nora listened, holding her grandmother's hand, grateful for every lucid moment. When it came time to leave, Nora stopped at the administration office. The woman behind the desk looked up with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Ms. Hayes, good timing. I was just about to call you." Nora's stomach dropped. "Is everything okay?" "Oh, yes. Actually, we received an anonymous donation this month that covered your grandmother's care with a note specifying her name. She paid anyway." Pride was a thin shield, but it was hers. Taking the envelope from a stranger, especially one with mercury eyes and a black car, felt too much like surrender. Very unusual, but not unheard of. Sometimes former patients leave bequests. A donation. Nora's mind raced. How much? The full amount. $3,200. The money in her purse suddenly felt heavier. The bills she'd carefully counted and recounted, scraped together from tips and borrowed hours. Money she no longer needed to spend. She paid anyway. Because accepting charity from an anonymous donor felt too much like accepting it from a vampire with silver eyes, who watched from shadows and made her feel things she had no business feeling. Thursday night crashed into the diner at 10:45 p.m. in the form of Owen Fletcher, drunker than Nora had ever seen him. He stumbled through the door, knocking over the stand that held menus, and pointed at her with an unsteady hand. "You." The word slurred, stretched. "You think you're too good for me now?" "Huh?" June moved from behind the counter. "Son, you need to leave. Right now." "Shut up, old woman. This is between me and my girlfriend." Owen lurched toward Nora, who backed toward the kitchen. The 3 other customers in the diner went very still. "I'm calling the police." June reached for the phone. "Call them. I don't care." Owen's eyes were red-rimmed, unfocused. "She owes me. 3 years. 3 years I wasted on her, and this is how she repays me?" He grabbed for the nearest table, fingers closing around a ceramic plate. For one terrible moment, Nora thought he was going to throw it. Instead, he let it fall. The crash was explosive, shards skittering across the floor. "Owen, please." Nora's back hit the counter. "You're drunk. Just go home." "Home? You mean the apartment I paid for? The one you're probably letting some other guy sleep in now?" He knocked over a napkin dispenser, a salt shaker, anything within reach, creating chaos because he could, because destruction was easier than dealing with rejection. Nora saw her chance. She darted toward the kitchen, but Owen was faster than his intoxication suggested. His hand shot out, fingers tangling in her ponytail, yanking her backward. Pain exploded across her scalp. She gasped, hands flying up to grab his wrist, trying to relieve the pressure. "Let go of me." "Not until you listen." His other hand rose, palm open, aimed at her face. The door opened. Ezra stepped inside. He moved with speed that was almost too fast to track, crossing the diner in heartbeats. His hand closed around Owen's raised fist, stopping it mid-swing. The sound of bones grinding together was audible in the sudden silence. Owen screamed, "Release her!" Ezra's voice was quiet, controlled, terrifying in its absolute calm. Owen's hand fell away from Nora's hair. She stumbled backward, hitting the counter, watching as Ezra slowly, deliberately increased the pressure on Owen's wrist. Not enough to break, just enough to make the threat clear. Mr. Fletcher, Ezra's use of the title was mocking. Drunk in public, assault, destruction of property, quite a performance. You're breaking my arm, Owen whimpered. No, if I were breaking your arm, you'd know. Ezra leaned closer. Touch her again, and no law will protect you. Do you understand? The temperature in the diner seemed to drop. Owen's face went pale, then gray. The smell of urine filled the air as his bladder released, staining the front of his jeans dark. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Ezra released Owen, who collapsed to the floor, cradling his wrist and sobbing. 2 police officers entered, hands on their weapons, taking in the scene. The broken dishes, the cowering man, the well-dressed stranger who radiated danger. They approached cautiously. June provided a statement, her voice steady and firm. She'd witnessed everything. The assault, the threats, the damage. The officers handcuffed Owen, who was still crying, and led him away. When the diner emptied, Nora found herself sitting in a booth, shaking. Ezra slid into the seat across from her, those silver eyes assessing. Are you hurt? No. Yes. I don't know. Her hands wouldn't stop trembling. Do you have somewhere safe to stay tonight? My apartment is fine. He studied her face, and she had the uncomfortable feeling he could see straight through her lie. If that changes, call me. He placed a business card on the table. She didn't throw the card away. Not because of the money he'd left or the coffee he never drank, but because the number on it felt like a door that would open when knocked. Plain white stock, a single phone number printed in black. No name. Who are you? Nora asked. Really? Someone who keeps his word. Ezra stood, buttoning his jacket. And I gave you my word that you'd be safe. He left before she could ask anything else. Through the window, she watched the black car pull away from the curb, disappearing into the night. Nora picked up the card, running her thumb across the embossed numbers. She should throw it away, should forget about mysterious men with impossible eyes who appeared whenever she needed help. Instead, she tucked it into her purse, next to her keys and the pepper spray she carried everywhere now, because some part of her, the part that had survived 3 years with Owen Fletcher, knew she'd need it soon. Chapter 4. Sanctuary. Offered. Owen Fletcher walked out of the police station at 6:47 p.m. on Friday evening. 18 hours after his arrest, his father's lawyers had posted bail and negotiated terms that made a mockery of the assault charge. House arrest denied. Restraining order pending. Court date set for 3 months away. Time enough for memories to fade and witnesses to reconsider. He stood on the steps, breathing free air, and pulled out his phone. The first post went live on social media at 7:03 p.m. A photo of Nora from 2 years ago, smiling at a company picnic Gerald Fletcher had hosted. The caption read, "Missing the love of my life. Sometimes relationships go through rough patches. Praying she comes home soon." The comments flooded in. Support from people who didn't know. Friends of the Fletcher family who understood that money bought narratives. Within an hour, Owen had crafted himself into a victim. The devoted boyfriend whose girlfriend had mental health issues. The patient man waiting for his love to get help. Nora saw it when June showed her the tablet at work that night, her face grim. "Honey, he's trying to control the story. He always does." Nora's hands shook as she refilled sugar dispensers. The bruises on her wrist had darkened to deep purple, impossible to hide. "Can you delete comments? Tell people the truth?" "I can. But his father owns half this city. People believe what they want to believe." The photos started arriving Tuesday morning. Anonymous emails with no return address, just images. Nora leaving her apartment at 5:30 a.m. Nora at the bus stop. Nora through the window of the diner, focused on her work. Unaware she was being watched. Someone was following her, documenting her movements, creating a catalog of her life. She didn't sleep Tuesday night, or Wednesday. The shadows in her apartment felt too deep, too full of possibility. Every creak of the building settling was footsteps. Every car passing on the street below was Owen circling, waiting. Thursday morning, she called Meadowbrook Assisted Living from the diner's back office, fingers wrapped so tight around the phone her knuckles went white. "Meadowbrook, how may I help you? This is Nora Hayes." My grandmother is Martha Hayes in room 247. I need to verify that she's safe. A pause. Is there a specific concern, Ms. Hayes? Just please check on her. Make sure no one unexpected has visited. The woman put her on hold. Muzak played, some instrumental version of a song Nora couldn't place. Her heart hammered against her ribs, counting seconds that felt like hours. Ms. Hayes? Your grandmother is fine. She's currently in the common room with other residents. No unusual visitors in our logs. Is everything all right? Yes, thank you. I'll see her Sunday as usual. She hung up and pressed her forehead against the cool wall, breathing through the panic that wanted to claw its way out of her chest. Sunday morning arrived gray and cold. November pushing against October, promising winter. Nora took the bus to Meadowbrook, watching every passenger who boarded, cataloging threats that existed only in her exhausted mind. Martha was having a bad day. She sat in her chair by the window, staring at the bird feeder without recognition, when Nora knocked on the doorframe. Grandma? It's me. It's Nora. Martha's eyes were distant, lost somewhere in the fog that dementia created. Nora? I had a daughter named Nora. I'm your granddaughter. She pulled up the visitor's chair, taking Martha's hands. They were cold, thin, bones too close to the surface. Your daughter was my mother. Oh, something cleared in Martha's gaze. You look like her. She was beautiful. They sat together for an hour. Martha drifted between past and present, sometimes recognizing Nora, sometimes thinking she was someone else entirely, but it was time together. That was what mattered. When Nora left, Martha was sleeping, head tilted back in the chair, mouth slightly open. Peaceful. Safe. Nora kissed her forehead and whispered a goodbye her grandmother wouldn't remember. The parking lot was half full. Sunday visitors coming and going, bearing flowers and photo albums and desperate hope that today would be a good day. Nora walked toward her Honda, keys already in hand, when she saw him. Owen, leaning against her car, arms crossed. Two men flanked him, friends from the construction crew she vaguely recognized. Broad shoulders, hard expressions, positioning that blocked her path. She stopped walking, 10 feet away, calculating escape routes. The main entrance was behind her. Other people were around. Witnesses. We need to talk. Owen pushed off the car, taking one step toward her. Just one. We have nothing to talk about. Sure we do. His voice was calm, reasonable. The dangerous kind of calm. You embarrassed me, Nora. Got me arrested. Made me look bad in front of the whole city. You made yourself look bad. See? That's where you're wrong. Another step. His friends moved with him, spreading out, creating a triangle with her at the center. I was trying to have a private conversation with my girlfriend. That guy interfered. You let him interfere. I'm not your girlfriend. Owen's jaw tightened. 5 minutes. That's all I want. 5 minutes in private where we can talk like adults without your rich boyfriend showing up. Nora's hand slipped into her purse. Her fingers found the business card Ezra had given her, the phone number embossed on heavy stock. She pulled out her cell phone, movements careful, deliberate. I'm calling the police if you don't leave right now. Call them. Owen smiled. By the time they get here, we'll be having a nice chat in my truck. Nothing illegal about talking. She dialed the number embossed on Ezra's card, the white stock slick under her thumb. The line connected on the first pulse. The line connected. She opened her mouth to speak. Owen's hand shot out, faster than she'd anticipated. He grabbed the phone, yanked it from her grip. For a terrible moment, she thought he'd smash it. Instead, he looked at the screen, saw the number she'd called, and his expression went dark. Him again. Of course it's him. He turned and threw the phone into his truck's open passenger window. That's done. You can't do this. Nora backed up a step. Owen's friends closed in from the sides. I can do whatever I want. My father owns this city. Your boyfriend doesn't scare me anymore. One friend grabbed her arm. The other took her other side. They lifted her, actually lifted her off her feet, and carried her toward Owen's truck. She kicked, tried to scream, but one of them clamped a hand over her mouth. Shh. We're just going for a ride. Nothing to worry about. They shoved her into the passenger seat. Owen climbed behind the wheel, starting the engine. His friends headed toward a second vehicle parked 2 rows over. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." Owen didn't look at her, eyes fixed forward as he shifted into reverse. "I love you. I just want you to remember that. Whatever happens next, it's because you wouldn't listen." 40 miles across the city, Ezra sat in a conference room with 6 vampire lords who controlled territories bordering his own. The meeting had been scheduled for weeks, a quarterly necessity to discuss blood supplier distribution and territory disputes. Tedious politics that required his attention. His phone sat face up on the table, silent, until it wasn't. The connection opened without a ring, just suddenly active, transmitting. Ezra's hand moved to it instantly, pressing it to his ear. Background noise, movement, a male voice he recognized immediately. Him again. Of course it's him. Owen Fletcher. The sound of something being thrown, fabric rustling, an engine starting. The line went muffled, as if the phone had been tossed onto a seat. Ezra stood, the chair scraping against marble flooring. 6 pairs of eyes turned to him. Ancient vampires whose combined age exceeded 3,000 years. Vampires who expected protocol, demanded respect, enforced rules that kept their kind hidden. "My lord?" The vampire to his right, territorial lord of the northern regions, frowned. "We haven't finished discussing the New Jersey Compact. Continue without me." Ezra was already moving toward the door. "This is highly irregular. The compact requires your signature. Vincent will sign on my behalf." He was out the door before anyone could protest further. Behind him, the conference room erupted in confused voices. In 412 years as king, he'd never left a meeting without explanation. Vincent materialized in the hallway, his expression somewhere between concern and exasperation. "My lord, what's happened? Track this phone." Ezra handed him his device, already pulling out a second phone from his jacket. "Now." Vincent's fingers flew across the screen. "GPS active. The signal is moving. Southwest trajectory, approximately 15 miles from your current location. Wait." He pulled up a map, overlaying the coordinates. "That's not her phone's usual signature. It's in someone else's vehicle." Ezra was walking toward the building's garage, each step eating distance with barely controlled speed. "Owen Fletcher has her. What are your orders?" "Find them. I'm going after her." "It's 2:47 in the afternoon, my lord. The sun is at peak intensity." Ezra stopped at the elevator, jabbing the button. "I'm aware of the time. This is suicide. You'll be severely weakened. Wait for sunset. We can mobilize a full team." "She doesn't have until sunset." The elevator doors opened. Ezra stepped inside, Vincent following. "Give me the location." Vincent pulled up a tracking application, his jaw tight with disapproval. "They're heading toward the industrial district. Coordinates updating every 30 seconds. My lord, please reconsider." Denoted and dismissed. The garage level appeared, dim and cool. Ezra moved toward his car, a black Audi that Vincent kept maintained. He opened the trunk, pulling out protective gear stored for emergencies. Heavy coat, hood, leather gloves, dark glasses, scarf to wrap around his face. "The vehicle has UV-treated glass," Vincent said, bringing up specifications on his tablet. 99% filtration. "You'll have maybe 20 minutes of functionality in direct sunlight before the exposure becomes critical. Then I'll make them count." Ezra slid behind the wheel, Vincent taking the passenger seat without asking. "I'm coming with you." "No, stay here. Monitor the tracking. If I don't check in within an hour, send a recovery team." Ezra started the engine. "And Vincent? If anything happens to me, protect her anyway." Vincent's expression softened fractionally. "As you wish, my lord." Ezra drove. The city blurred past at speeds that would have gotten any human driver arrested. 90 miles per hour on surface streets, running red lights, weaving through traffic with reflexes faster than conscious thought. His phone sat in the cup holder, Vincent's voice feeding him updates. "They've stopped. Looks like a warehouse district off Route 7. Sending coordinates to your navigation." The dashboard display updated. 15 minutes away. 12 if he pushed it. 9 if he abandoned any pretense of following traffic laws. He made it in 9. The warehouse appeared ahead, a sprawling concrete structure surrounded by empty lots and rusted chain-link fencing. Owen's truck sat in the parking area, engine running. Through the UV-treated glass, Ezra could see 2 figures in the cab. He pulled across the exit, blocking it completely, stepped out of the car into the November sunlight. Pain hit him immediately. Even through the protective gear, the sun found exposed skin at his wrists, the fraction of his neck visible above the scarf. It burned like acid, like fire, like every punishment he'd ever endured in 4 centuries compressed into a single moment. He ignored it. Owen saw him coming, saw the car blocking escape. His face went pale through the truck's windshield. He shifted into gear, aimed directly at Ezra, and floored the accelerator. 2 tons of metal and momentum bearing down at 40 miles per hour. Ezra planted his feet and caught the hood with both hands. The impact should have killed a human instantly, should have shattered bones, pulped organs, ended life. Instead, Ezra absorbed the force. Muscles that had been enhanced 4 centuries ago by transformation now working at full capacity. His fingers dug into the metal, puncturing it, finding purchase in the engine block beneath. The truck stopped. Not gradually, instantly, as if it had hit a wall. Metal screamed. The hood crumpled under his grip, warping inward, the engine block visible through the tiers. Steam hissed from ruptured hoses. Owen sat frozen behind the wheel, hands locked on the steering column, mouth open in a soundless scream. His friends, still in their separate vehicle, took one look and fled. Tires squealing, they abandoned their employer and his victim without a second's hesitation. Owen fumbled for the door lock, clicked all 4 doors sealed, as if metal and glass could protect him from what stood outside. Ezra moved to the driver's side, wrapped his fingers around the door handle, and pulled. The door came off, hinges shrieking, metal tearing, safety glass spiderwebbing but not shattering. He set it aside almost gently, then reached in and hauled Owen out by his collar. Owen collapsed onto the asphalt, consciousness fleeing. His body had done what his mind couldn't, shut down in the face of something it couldn't process. Ezra turned to the passenger side. Nora sat pressed against the door, eyes huge, all color drained from her face. She stared at the ruined hood, at the door lying on the ground, at the man who'd just demonstrated strength that shouldn't exist. He opened her door carefully, normally, as if he hadn't just ripped another one free moments ago. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, couldn't speak, just shook her head and kept staring. "Nora," his voice gentled, "I need you to look at me." She did. Those honey-colored eyes finally focused on his face. "What are you?" Sirens wailed in the distance. Someone had called the police. They had minutes, maybe less. "I can explain everything. But first, I need to know if you trust me enough to come with me right now." "Trust you." Her voice was hollow. Shock-stealing inflection. "You just stopped a truck with your hands." "I did." "And that's impossible." "Yes." "Are you going to hurt me?" "Never." The sirens grew louder. Red and blue lights appeared at the end of the access road. "You have 10 seconds to decide," Ezra said. "Come with me and I'll tell you everything. Stay here and you'll spend hours explaining something you don't understand to police who won't believe you anyway. And Owen will be free again by tonight." Nora looked at the unconscious man on the ground, at the destroyed truck, at Ezra, whose hands were steady, despite having just performed an impossible feat. She unbuckled her seatbelt and got out of the truck. "I'm trusting you," she said. "I know. Thank you." He guided her to his car, settled her in the passenger seat, and pulled away from the scene 30 seconds before the first police cruiser arrived. In the rearview mirror, he watched officers pour out, surrounding Owen Fletcher and his mangled vehicle. They drove in silence for 5 minutes. Nora sat perfectly still, hands folded in her lap, breathing measured and controlled, processing. Finally, she spoke. "You're not human." "No. What are you?" Ezra took a breath he didn't technically need. "I'm a vampire. I've been a vampire for 412 years, and I'm the king of every vampire on the eastern seaboard." She should have laughed, should have demanded he let her out, should have done anything except sit there nodding slowly as if it all made terrible sense. "That's why you never drink the coffee." Despite everything, Ezra almost smiled. "Yes. And the strength." And why you're always at the diner at night. Yes. Are you going to kill me? No, I'm going to protect you. Formally. It's called sanctuary. 30 days of absolute protection, while I make sure Owen Fletcher can never hurt you again. 30 days. She turned to look at him directly. And then what? Then you decide if you want to continue living under my protection, or if you feel safe enough to return to your normal life. Normal. The word was bitter. My life hasn't been normal since I met Owen Fletcher. Then perhaps it's time for a different kind of abnormal. She was quiet for another minute. Then, okay. I'll accept your sanctuary. Because right now you're the only person who's actually helped me, and I don't have a lot of other options. Ezra felt something in his chest that might have been relief. Might have been something more dangerous. Then welcome to my protection, Nora Hayes. Nothing will harm you now. Promise? He looked at her. This human woman who'd just watched him tear apart a vehicle and responded with pragmatism instead of hysteria. Who was choosing to trust a vampire king because the monsters who wore human faces had proven more terrible. I promise, he said. On my blood and my crown and everything I am. You're under my protection now. And despite everything she'd seen, everything that had just happened, Nora Hayes leaned back in the seat and closed her eyes. For the first time in weeks, she felt safe. Chapter 5. Behind Glass. The penthouse occupied the top 3 floors of the tallest building in the financial district. Glass and steel and money. So much money that Nora stopped trying to calculate what it might cost. The elevator opened directly into the entry hall, where Vincent waited with a leather portfolio under one arm. Ms. Hayes. He inclined his head, formal and precise. Welcome. If you'll follow me, there are formalities to address. Nora glanced at Ezra, who nodded once. She followed Vincent into a room that looked like it belonged in a museum. Dark wood paneling, shelves lined with books that smelled of age and dust. A desk that might have been carved in the 18th century. Vincent opened the portfolio and extracted a single sheet of parchment. Actual parchment, yellowed with age, covered in flowing script that looked handwritten. He set it on the desk along with an antique fountain pen. The sanctuary contract. Please read carefully before signing. Nora read. The language was formal, almost archaic, but the meaning was clear. 30 days of absolute protection under Ezra's authority. No vampire or human could threaten her without declaring war on the vampire king. She'd have full access to the penthouse but couldn't leave without escort. Most importantly, she couldn't reveal the existence of vampires to anyone outside this agreement. After 30 days, she could choose to renew or return to her normal life if the threat had been neutralized. Her hand shook as she signed her name at the bottom. The ink seemed to shimmer on the parchment, then settled into ordinary black. It's done. Vincent collected the document. Your suite is on the 2nd level. I'll show you. The suite was larger than her entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city. Blackout curtains pulled back to reveal light stretching to the horizon. A king-sized bed dominated one wall, dressed in linens that probably cost more than her monthly rent. The bathroom had marble counters, and a shower big enough for 3 people. But it was the closet that made her stop. Racks of clothing in her exact size. Jeans, sweaters, dresses, shoes arranged by type and color. Everything new, tags still attached. How did you know my sizes? She asked Ezra, who'd appeared in the doorway. I'm thorough. This is too much. This is necessity. You arrived with nothing but the clothes you're wearing. His voice gentled. Accept the help, Nora. You're under my protection now. That includes ensuring you're comfortable. She wanted to argue. Pride demanded it. But exhaustion won. Thank you. Rest. We'll talk more tonight. He left her alone. Nora stood in the middle of the suite, surrounded by luxury she'd never imagined, and felt the weight of the past weeks crash down on her. She made it to the bed before the tears came. The first few days passed in a haze of adjustment. Nora woke at 6 every morning out of habit. Her body still programmed for double shifts and early buses, but there was nowhere to go, nothing to do. She'd shower, dress in clothes that fit too perfectly, and wander the penthouse like a ghost. Ezra slept during the day in a sealed chamber on the 3rd floor. Vincent had explained the necessity without details. Sunlight was lethal. The Vampire King required absolute darkness to rest safely. So Nora explored alone. The second floor held her suite and several guest rooms, all empty. The main floor was living space, kitchen she didn't cook in, sitting room with furniture that looked antique, entertainment system she didn't know how to operate. And the library. The library took her breath away. 2 stories of books, connected by a spiral staircase with reading nooks tucked into corners. First editions from centuries past. Volumes in languages she didn't recognize. And journals, leather-bound and handwritten, filling an entire shelf. She pulled one down carefully. The date inside read 1613, written in faded brown ink. Ezra's handwriting, she realized. Precise and controlled even then. The entries were in English, though the spelling was archaic. He wrote about his human life. About a wife named Catherine, and a daughter named Anne. About losing them both to influenza within days of each other. About the rage and grief that had made him vulnerable when the vampire found him. Nora read for hours, not asking permission, unable to stop. She learned about his transformation at 32. The agony of dying and waking is something else. The decades he'd spent learning control. The centuries building power until other vampires began calling him king. But it was the emotional truth that struck her. The loneliness. The weight of living while everyone he'd loved turned to dust. The careful distance he maintained from humanity, because attachment meant loss. And loss never stopped hurting even after 400 years. Find anything interesting? She jumped, nearly dropping the journal. Ezra stood at the base of the spiral staircase, dressed in dark slacks and a white shirt, hair damp from a recent shower. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have read these without asking. I left them accessible for a reason. He climbed the stairs, movements fluid and silent. What year are you on? 1847. You were in London. Ah, the year I met Victoria. She was insufferable. He took the journal from her hands, flipping through pages. I wrote too much back then. Tried to process centuries of existence through words. It didn't help. Did anything help? He looked at her, silver eyes catching the lamplight. Purpose. Protecting my kind. Enforcing the covenant. Giving the immortality meaning beyond simple survival. That sounds lonely. It is. He set the journal back on the shelf. But loneliness is preferable to the alternative. Which is caring again. Losing again. He moved toward the stairs. Dinner will be ready in an hour. Vincent arranged for a chef. You don't eat. No. But you do. Dinner became their routine. Every night at 8, Nora would find a meal waiting in the dining room. Vincent's doing, she learned. The vampire had connections to human staff who prepared food and left it in the service elevator without ever entering the penthouse proper. Ezra would sit across from her with a glass of wine he wouldn't drink. Watching her eat meals she barely tasted. Slowly, conversations developed. She told him about nursing school, about Martha, about dreams of a life beyond waitressing. He told her about empire building, about the politics of vampire society, about the covenant, ancient laws that kept different supernatural species from destroying each other and exposing their existence to humanity. So it's not just vampires. Nora set down her fork, appetite gone. There are other things out there. Many things. Most want nothing to do with humans. Some can't help it. That's why we have rules. And you enforce them. I do. For 400 years, I've kept the Eastern Territories stable. Wars are bad for everyone. Exposure is worse. He swirled the wine in his glass, watching it catch the light. Humans aren't ready to know what shares the world with them. I'm ready. You're exceptional. The words hung between them. Weighted with meaning neither of them acknowledged. Nora felt heat rise in her cheeks. Ezra's expression didn't change, but something in his posture shifted. Awareness, tension, the particular electricity of two people realizing they'd crossed an invisible line. Day 8 arrived with frustration clawing at Nora's chest. She'd called Meadowbrook Assisted Living 3 times that day, needing to hear that Martha was safe. The nurses were patient, but clearly confused by her anxiety. I want to see her. Nora found Ezra in his study, surrounded by papers and screens. My grandmother. I need to see her. It's too dangerous. She doesn't know where I am. She probably doesn't even remember I'm gone. The words hurt to say. Please. Just a phone call with video. Something. Ezra studied her face for a long moment. Then he nodded. Vincent. Arrange a secure video connection to Meadowbrook. Ms. Hayes wants to speak with her grandmother. The call connected 10 minutes later. Martha's face appeared on the screen, confused and distant. She looked smaller than Nora remembered. Frailer. The nurse had positioned her in front of the camera, but Martha stared past it, eyes unfocused. Grandma? It's Nora. Can you hear me? Nora? Martha's voice was vague. Do I know a Nora? I'm your granddaughter. Your daughter Emily's girl. Emily. Recognition flickered. I had a daughter. She was beautiful. Is she here? No, Grandma. Mom died, remember? 15 years ago. Oh. Yes. That's right. Martha's attention drifted to something off-screen. The birds are lovely today. Nora tried for another 5 minutes. Martha responded occasionally, mistaking her for other people, losing the thread of conversation mid-sentence. When the nurse gently ended the call, Nora was crying. I'm sorry. She wiped her eyes roughly. This is stupid. I knew she was getting worse. A hand settled on her shoulder. Warm, solid, grounding. Ezra stood beside her chair, his touch careful as if she might break. It's not stupid. It's grief. She's not dead yet. No, but you're grieving what you're losing anyway. That's allowed. Nora leaned into the touch without thinking. Ezra's hand stayed on her shoulder, thumb moving in small circles against her collarbone. Comfort from a man who'd spent centuries avoiding attachment. From a vampire who'd sworn off caring. She wondered if he realized how significant the gesture was. Thank you, she whispered. Always. Nora called June from the secure line that evening. The older woman answered on the first ring, voice tight with worry. Honey, are you okay? That man who called said you were safe but needed time. I've been worried sick. I'm safe, June. I promise. I just need to deal with some family stuff. The lie tasted bitter. Is the diner okay? The diner's fine. Your job is waiting whenever you're ready. But Nora, that Fletcher boy has been sniffing around, asking when you'll be back. I told him you quit, but I don't think he believed me. Good. Keep telling him that. And June, thank you. For everything. You're like a daughter to me, you know that. Whatever you're dealing with, you call if you need anything. I will. She ended the call feeling worse than before, adding lies to the growing pile of complications. But what choice did she have? Explaining that she was living with a vampire king wasn't exactly an option. Vincent appeared in the study at midnight with news that made Ezra's jaw tighten. The Fletcher investigation is proceeding. Multiple charges including assault, destruction of property, and attempted kidnapping. However, Gerald Fletcher has retained Morrison and Associates, the firm that specializes in making problems disappear. Ezra set down the financial report he'd been reviewing. What else? A private investigator was spotted surveilling the building. We've identified him as Roger Hale, employed by Fletcher Construction. He's been documenting entry and exit patterns. He knows Ms. Hayes is here, but not what I am. Correct. As far as they know, you're simply a wealthy businessman with resources. Concerning, but not existential. Nora, listening from the doorway, felt ice pool in her stomach. They found me. They found the building, Ezra corrected. They haven't found you, and they won't. Vincent, increase security. I want eyes on every approach. If Hale or anyone associated with the Fletchers gets within 2 blocks, I want to know immediately. Already done, my lord. After Vincent left, Ezra turned to find Nora still in the doorway. You should rest. I can't. Every time I close my eyes, I see Owen's face, hear his voice, feel his hands. She wrapped her arms around herself. How long until this is over? As long as it takes to ensure you're safe. That's not an answer. It's the only honest one I have. He moved toward her, stopping just within reach. Close enough that she could feel the unnatural coolness of his body, the absence of warmth that marked him as something other. The Fletchers are powerful. Dismantling their influence will take time, but it will happen. I promise you that. Why? The question escaped before she could stop it. Why do you care so much? Ezra was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft. Because you stepped in front of danger without hesitation. Because you've survived things that would break most people. Because when you look at me, you see a person, not a monster. He lifted his hand, stopping inches from her face. And because 400 years of careful distance means nothing when I hear you cry. Nora's breath caught. The air between them felt charged, dangerous. One step forward and she'd be in his arms. One word, and she'd cross a line that couldn't be uncrossed. She took that step. Ezra's arms closed around her, careful and strong. He was cold against her warmth, solid against her trembling. She pressed her face to his chest, hearing no heartbeat, feeling no breath, but finding comfort anyway. They stood that way for a long time. A vampire and a human. A king and a waitress. Two damaged people finding solace in the dark. Outside, the city glittered. Inside, something was beginning. Something that terrified them both. Chapter 6. Lines. We cross. The nightmare came at 4:12 a.m. on the 12th day of Sanctuary. Nora woke screaming, throat raw, sheets twisted around her legs. Owen's hands, his voice, the smell of whiskey and rage. Her bedroom door flew open before the echo faded. Ezra stood in the doorway, hair disheveled, eyes wide. He crossed the room in 3 strides, sitting on the edge of her bed without asking permission. Breathe. You're safe. He can't reach you here. I know that. Her hands shook violently. But my brain doesn't care what's real. It just remembers. What do you need? I don't know. Ezra's hand hovered near her shoulder, uncertain. Then he made a decision and pulled her against his chest. Cold skin through thin fabric. No heartbeat beneath her ear. But solid. Real. Present. I swear on my blood and my crown. He said quietly. Owen Fletcher will never touch you again. Never hurt you. Never even speak your name without consequence. Do you understand? This is a blood oath. The most sacred promise a vampire can make. Nora's fingers curled into his shirt. What happens if you break it? Death. Immediate and absolute. The magic enforces itself. Then don't make promises you might not keep. I keep my promises. Always. They stayed that way until her breathing steadied. Until the tremors faded. Until exhaustion pulled her back toward sleep. Ezra's hand moved through her hair in slow, soothing strokes. Ancient gesture of comfort, performed by someone who'd forgotten how to offer it. When Nora's grip loosened and her breathing deepened, Ezra tried to stand. Her fingers tightened on his shirt. Stay. Please. He settled back against the headboard, letting her sleep with her head on his shoulder. Outside, the city began its daily transformation from night to morning. Inside, a vampire king who'd spent 4 centuries avoiding attachment sat in the dark and admitted the truth. He was falling for her, had already fallen, was drowning in feelings he'd sworn never to experience again. Vincent found him there at dawn, still holding Nora while she slept. The older vampire's expression was carefully neutral as Ezra extracted himself and followed him into the hallway. My lord, we need to discuss your behavior. Do we? The attachment you're forming is dangerous. For both of you. Vincent kept his voice low. The covenant exists for reasons that transcend personal desire. If the other territorial lords perceive weakness, if they believe a human has influence over you, they'll do nothing. I'm still their king. Until you're not. Until someone challenges your authority because they see you choosing immortal over your duties. Vincent's jaw tightened. I've served you for 200 years. I've never questioned your judgment. But this woman could destroy everything you've built. Or save what I've lost. Ezra moved toward his study. Your concern is noted. Now drop it. The library became Nora's refuge. She spent hours organizing volumes by century, by language, by subject. Ezra found her there most evenings, surrounded by stacks of books, fingers dusty from ancient paper. Did you know there were vampire philosophers in the 14th century? She looked up from a Latin text she couldn't read. This one argued that immortality created moral responsibility to preserve human knowledge. Marcus of Prague, I met him once. Insufferable man. Brilliant, but insufferable. Ezra leaned against the shelf. He died in 1483. Started a war with a werewolf pack over a human woman. Ironic, given his philosophy. What happened to the woman? She chose the werewolf. His smile was wry. Marcus took it poorly. They talked for hours. Ezra explaining centuries she'd only read about in history books. The fall of empires, the rise of nations, wars he'd survived, plagues he'd watched devastate populations. He made history personal, immediate, real. You never fed from humans you knew, Nora said suddenly. In your journals, you always went to strangers. Feeding creates intimacy. Even when consensual, it's vulnerability. Easier to maintain distance with strangers. Can I see? The feeding clinic you mentioned. Ezra studied her face. You're certain? I need to understand what you are. All of it. The clinic occupied the 15th floor. Clinical white walls, medical equipment, comfortable chairs where donors reclined. A nurse checked vitals while a young vampire Nora hadn't met, fed from a woman's wrist, his fangs buried in flesh that barely bled. We pay $500 per donation, Ezra explained. Monthly limit, full medical screening. Consent is absolute. Donors can refuse any vampire for any reason. It's not what I expected. You expected monsters in the dark. We evolved past that centuries ago. Most of us anyway. The woman finished her donation, accepted payment via app transfer, and left smiling. Professional, routine. Nothing like the horror movies Nora had grown up watching. You've never forced anyone. It wasn't a question. Never. Consent is sacred to me. I've seen what happens when my kind forgets that. It ends in exposure, witch hunts, war. We survive by staying hidden and ethical. That evening, Nora called Meadowbrook from the secure line. The nurse answered cheerfully. Ms. Hayes, your grandmother was asking about you this morning. Had a lovely clear spell. Wanted to know when you'd visit. Relief and guilt warred in Nora's chest. Tell her soon. Tell her I love her. I will, dear. She called June next. The conversation was brief, careful, still playing the role of woman dealing with family emergency, adding lies to the growing collection. That Fletcher boy came by again, June said, looking rough, asking questions. I told him you moved out of state. Thank you, June, for everything. You just stay safe, honey. That's all I care about. The confrontation came on day 14. Gerald Fletcher appeared in the building lobby at 3:47 p.m., demanding to see the man who has my son's girlfriend. Security called Vincent. Vincent called Ezra. Bring him to the corporate office. Ground floor. Neutral territory. The office was sterile. Glass desk, leather chairs, city view that cost more than most people earned in a year. Ezra sat behind the desk, fingers steepled, when Vincent escorted Gerald inside. Gerald Fletcher at 62 looked like money and power. Silver hair perfectly styled. Suit that cost 5 figures. Watch that cost 6. He walked into the room like he owned it. Mr. Volkov, I presume. Mr. Fletcher, this is unexpected. Is it? My son has been hospitalized with injuries. My property has been destroyed. And my daughter-in-law. She's not his wife. A technicality. Gerald sat without being invited. I'm a reasonable man. I'm prepared to offer compensation for whatever misunderstanding occurred. $100,000. You return Nora, forget this incident, and we all move on. Ezra's expression didn't change. Your offer is an insult. Miss Hayes is under my protection by her own choice. Your son is a violent criminal who should be in prison, not a hospital. My son made mistakes. Young men do. But you've escalated a domestic dispute into something dangerous. Gerald leaned forward. I have connections. City contracts. The mayor's personal number. I can make problems for your business interests. You have no idea who you're threatening. I know you're wealthy. Foreign investor, probably. But wealth doesn't make you untouchable. This city runs on relationships I've built over decades. You're an outsider. Ezra stood, walking to the window. Below, Humans moved through their brief lives, unaware of the predator watching from above. Leave this building. Don't contact Miss Hayes. Instruct your son to do the same. If you refuse, I'll dismantle everything you've built. Legally, publicly, and permanently. Gerald's face went red. You can't. I can. Test me and discover exactly what resources I command. After Gerald left, Vincent found Ezra still at the window. You could have used compulsion. One command and he'd never bother her again. Compulsion requires direct eye contact, and it's considered a grave violation of covenant law. I use it only in absolute emergency. Ezra turned from the glass. I won't break our own rules, not even for her. Some would call that weakness. Let them. Vincent was quiet for a moment. Then, he'll escalate. Men like Gerald don't accept defeat gracefully. I know. That's what I'm counting on. When he breaks the law trying to hurt her, I'll have legal justification to destroy him completely. And if he hurts her first? Ezra's eyes flashed silver. He won't. I'll burn his entire world down before I let that happen. That night, Nora found Ezra in the library. He looked up from financial reports, exhaustion showing in the set of his shoulders. Gerald came to see you today. She'd heard from Vincent. What did he want? To buy you. As if you were a property he could negotiate for. What did you say? No. She moved closer, drawn by something she couldn't name. Why do you care so much? I'm nobody. A waitress who can barely pay her bills? You're a king who's lived for centuries. This doesn't make sense. Ezra set down the reports. When he looked at her, vulnerability showed through the careful control. Because you see me as a person, not a monster or a means to an end. Because you're brave and stubborn and refuse to break even when everything's trying to crush you. Because when I hear you cry, 400 years of careful distance means absolutely nothing. The air between them crackled with tension. Nora took the final step that brought her within touching distance. What if I don't want distance either? His hand rose, fingertips brushing her cheek. Cold against warm. Dead against living. This is dangerous. For both of us. I don't care. You should. But I don't. They stood on the edge of something inevitable. Something that would change everything. Tomorrow would bring new complications. But tonight, in the silence of the library, a vampire and a human stopped pretending they didn't want exactly what they couldn't have. Chapter 7. Burning for Her. The empire of Gerald Fletcher began to crumble on Tuesday morning. An anonymous tip reached the IRS at 9:47 a.m., triggering an audit that uncovered $3 million in fraudulent deductions. By noon, the city comptroller's office had frozen Fletcher Construction's municipal contracts pending investigation. Wednesday brought worse news. 3 ex-girlfriends of Owen Fletcher gave interviews to local media, each telling stories of violence that mirrored Nora's experience. Photos of hospital records, police reports that had mysteriously vanished. Settlements paid in exchange for silence. Thursday, narcotics detectives raided Fletcher Construction's main site. They found oxycodone distribution network operating through the payroll office, 12 arrests by sunset. Gerald Fletcher watched his life's work dissolve in 6 days. He knew who'd orchestrated it. Money couldn't hide the precision, the coordination. Ezra Volkov was dismantling him piece by piece, legally and publicly. Friday evening, Gerald made a phone call to men who didn't ask questions if the price was right. Day 19 of Sanctuary arrived with Nora pacing the penthouse like a caged animal. I need to see her. It's been almost 4 weeks, including before I came here. Please, Ezra. It's too dangerous. Martha won't remember I was gone. But I'll remember I abandoned her. Nora's voice cracked. She had a lucid moment yesterday. The nurse said she asked for me. Ezra studied her face, seeing the desperation there. Vincent and 2 guards. You don't leave their sight for a second. Thank you. Sunday morning, Vincent drove Nora to Meadowbrook in an armored SUV. 2 vampires flanked her as she entered the facility, professional and alert. Room 247 waited at the end of a familiar hallway. Martha sat by the window, clearer than she'd been in weeks. When Nora knocked, her grandmother smiled with full recognition. There's my girl. I was wondering when you'd visit. They talked for an hour. Martha told stories about Nora's mother, about her own childhood, about a husband who'd made her laugh, lucid and present and whole. Nora held her grandmother's thin hands, memorizing this moment because she knew how rare it was. I love you, Grandma. I love you too, sweetheart. Don't work too hard. You look tired. The parking lot was half empty when they emerged. Vincent moved ahead, scanning for threats. The two guards flanked Nora, positioning themselves between her and the open spaces. The attack came from 3 directions simultaneously. Snipers with military-grade UV rifles, mercenaries wearing presence suppressors, technology that masked their hostile intentions from vampire senses. 4 men total, professional and fast. Vincent took the first shot to the chest. UV rounds designed to fragment on impact, burning vampire flesh from the inside. He went down hard, skin already smoking. The guards moved to protect Nora, but the second volley caught them both. 45 seconds from first shot to complete neutralization. No time for telepathic warnings. No time for anything except efficiency. Nora ran. Made it 6 steps before strong hands grabbed her arms. A cloth pressed over her mouth, chemical smell making her head swim. The world tilted sideways as they lifted her, carrying her toward a waiting van. Vincent, burning and broken, managed one final act. His hand found his phone, triggered the emergency beacon. GPS coordinates transmitted directly to Ezra's device before consciousness fled. Ezra sat in his private study when the alert screamed. 2:47 p.m. Full daylight, 3 hours before sunset. The coordinates appeared on his screen, updating in real time as the van moved. His phone rang. Vincent's number. He answered to hear ragged breathing, the sound of flesh sizzling. Taken. 4 mercenaries, UV weapons, suppressors, moving southwest. The line went dead. Ezra was already moving. Vincent materialized in the hallway, his face a mask of concern. My lord, it's daylight. You can't... Track that van. Give me coordinates every 30 seconds. The sun will kill you. Not fast enough. Ezra pulled protective gear from the emergency closet. Heavy coat, hood, gloves, wrap for his face, layers that would buy minutes at most. The SUV? UV-treated glass blocks 99%. But exposure is still exposure. You'll have maybe 20 minutes before... I know the limitations. Ezra was already dressed, already moving toward the garage. If I don't return within 2 hours, send recovery teams for all of us. Ezra. Vincent used his given name, something he hadn't done in decades. She's human. You're the vampire king. The risk is mine to take. The SUV's engine roared to life. Ezra drove into afternoon sunlight that wanted him dead. Pain hit immediately. Even through UV-treated glass, through protective clothing, the sun found skin. Wrists where gloves met sleeves. The fraction of neck visible above the wrap. It burned like acid, like fire, like every punishment condensed into single moment. The city blurred past at 90 miles per hour, running red lights, weaving through traffic with reflexes faster than human reaction time. His phone fed him updates. The van heading toward the industrial district. 15 miles. 12. 8. 25 minutes of agony. The sun stealing strength with every passing second. But Nora was in that van. And that made the pain irrelevant. The warehouse appeared ahead. Concrete structure, rusted fencing. The van parked near a side entrance. Ezra pulled across the exit, blocking escape, and stepped out into direct sunlight. The protective gear helped. Barely. His exposed skin blistered instantly. The pain transcended anything he'd felt in 4 centuries. But pain was just information. Nora was inside. The warehouse door stood open. He entered to find hell waiting. Gerald Fletcher stood beside his son. Owen held Nora, one arm around her throat, a knife pressed to her neck. 4 mercenaries aimed UV rifles at the entrance. Professional setup. Kill box designed for exactly this scenario. Mr. Volkov. Gerald's voice was steady. You came. How predictable. Ezra's eyes tracked every detail. Nora's pulse hammering visible in her throat. The mercenary's fingers on triggers. Owen's hand shaking, knife drawing a thin line of blood. Let her go. No, I don't think I will. Gerald stepped forward. You've destroyed my business, humiliated my son. This ends with you on your knees, begging for mercy we won't give. The mercenaries fired. Ezra moved faster than their enhanced scopes could track. The UV rounds burned through his coat, searing flesh, but he was already among them. 4 men down in 30 seconds. Not dead. Just broken enough to stop being threats. Owen pressed the knife harder. Nora whimpered. Stay back or I'll cut her throat. You won't. Ezra's voice was death itself. Because the second her blood spills, I'll show you what 4 centuries of predatory evolution means. His face wrap had loosened during the fight. He tore it free, revealing features burned by sunlight. Skin blistered and raw, and fangs fully extended, no longer hidden. His eyes blazed pure silver. No pupil, no humanity. Just ancient hunger given form. Owen's knife hand froze. Gerald stumbled backward. Ezra locked eyes with Owen. Direct contact. The compulsion he'd sworn never to use except in absolute emergency. Ancient magic that violated every principle of the Covenant. Drop the knife. Step away from her. You will never touch Nora Hayes again. Never speak her name. Never think of her without remembering this moment. This is compulsion. This is blood magic. This is my command carved into your soul. The knife clattered to concrete. Owen's face went blank, pupils dilating as the magic took hold. Gerald tried to run. Ezra caught him in 2 strides. You're next. Eyes to eyes, will to will. If either of you approaches her, threatens her, even dreams of her, you'll turn yourselves into the nearest police station and confess everything. Every crime, every lie. This is irrevocable. This is binding. This is forever. Both Fletchers nodded, compulsion settling into their minds like chains. Ezra turned to Nora, cutting her bonds. She fell into his arms, trembling. I've got you. You're safe. They moved toward the door. The sunlight beyond was brutal, unforgiving. Ezra wrapped Nora in his coat, sacrificing protection for her comfort. When they stepped outside, the sun hit his exposed face. The scarf had fallen completely away. Direct exposure. His skin ignited, not metaphorically. Actual combustion as centuries-old cells met their one true enemy. Nora screamed. Ezra's face bubbled and charred, flesh cooking away from bone. But he kept moving, kept carrying her, kept going until they reached the SUV. He placed her in the passenger seat with hands that were blackening, crumbling. Then he slid behind the wheel and drove. Drove through agony that would have killed anything mortal. Drove because stopping meant dying, and dying meant leaving her unprotected. The penthouse garage appeared after an eternity. Medical team waiting. Vampires in white coats rushing forward. Ezra stumbled out of the SUV and collapsed. Is she hurt? His voice was barely recognizable, vocal cords damaged by internal burning. Check her first. My lord, you're... Her first. They checked Nora. Minor cuts, bruising, shock. Nothing permanent. When they told Ezra this, he finally allowed his eyes to close. The burns covered 60% of his body. Weeks of healing, maybe months. For any lesser vampire, they would have been fatal. But before unconsciousness took him, Ezra felt Nora's hand grip his, warm and alive and safe. Worth it, he thought. Worth everything. Then darkness claimed the vampire king, and the waiting began. Chapter 8. Forever starts now. 3 days. Ezra lay in the healing chamber for 3 days, skin knitting itself back together, cell by agonizing cell. Ancient vampire physiology fought against damage that would have killed anything younger. The burns covered 60% of his body. 3rd-degree destruction that should have been fatal. Nora refused to leave. She sat in the chair beside his bed, leaving only when Vincent physically escorted her to eat or shower. The medical team changed bandages hourly, applying compounds that smelled of herbs and copper. Each time they unwrapped his face, Nora forced herself to look, to see what he'd sacrificed for her. Day 22 of Sanctuary arrived with Ezra's eyes opening. You're awake. Nora's voice cracked from disuse. She'd barely spoken in 72 hours. How long? His voice was rough, Healing vocal cords still damaged. 3 days. The doctors said your age saved you. Younger vampires don't survive exposure like that. Ezra's hand moved toward hers. The skin was pink and new, tender as a newborn's. She caught his fingers carefully, holding them like they might break. "Martha?" he asked. "Safe. I call the facility every day. She's been asking for me." Tears spilled down Nora's cheeks. "You almost died. For me. Why would you do that?" "Because you're worth everything." He said it simply, stating fact rather than poetry. They talked for hours as Ezra's strength returned. About fear and sacrifice, and the dangerous thing growing between them. About futures that shouldn't exist, but did anyway. "The sanctuary ends in 8 days," Nora said quietly. "What happens then? You decide. Renew the formal protection or leave if you feel safe enough. But there's a third option." Ezra pushed himself up against the pillows, wincing. "Stay here not as someone under my protection, but as my partner. No magical contract, just choice. I'd be free to leave any time. Always. That's the point. I want you here because you choose to be, not because obligation binds you." Nora studied his face, healing but still marked by what he'd endured. "I choose to stay." Day 30 arrived with paperwork and endings. The sanctuary contract dissolved at midnight, magic releasing its hold. Nora signed termination documents that turned ancient parchment to ash in Vincent's hands. "You're welcome to remain in the guest suite for as long as you wish," Vincent said formally. "No conditions. No obligations. Thank you." June took her back at Ember's diner part-time, 8-hour shifts 3 days weekly. "Honey, you look different. Stronger somehow." "I am." The weeks that followed developed their own rhythm. Nora returned to online nursing courses, studying at the penthouse library while Ezra managed his territory. They still had dinner together every night, conversations evolving from careful to comfortable to intimate, without either noticing the transition. 6 weeks after Sanctuary ended, Ezra kissed her. It happened in the library, both reaching for the same book, hands colliding. He pulled back, apologizing, and she caught his face between her palms. "Don't apologize." The kiss was gentle, tentative, cold lips against warm. 4 centuries of loneliness meeting 24 years of survival. When they parted, Ezra's eyes were silver and vulnerable. "This changes everything," he whispered. "I know. We can't undo this." "I don't want to." 3 months later, intimacy followed. Slow exploration of trust and desire, learning how a vampire and human could fit together. Ezra was patient, careful, treating her like something precious rather than fragile. Nora discovered that cold skin warmed under her touch, that ancient bodies still remembered pleasure. "I love you," she told him afterward, tracing the faint scars remaining from his burns. "I know." His smile was soft. "I've known for months. I was just afraid to say it first. Say it now. I love you, Nora Hayes. Have loved you since you stepped in front of that bullet meant for someone else. Will love you until stars burn out." Every Sunday, Nora visited Martha. Ezra sent discreet escorts who waited in the parking lot, close enough to respond to danger, but far enough to give her privacy. Some weeks Martha was lucid, recognizing her granddaughter and asking about her life. Nora told edited versions, leaving out vampires and kings and the man she'd fallen for. Other weeks, Martha was lost. Those visits were harder, watching the woman who'd raised her slip further into fog. 2 years passed. Nora graduated with her nursing degree, passing boards on the first attempt. She took a position at the donor clinic in Ezra's building, caring for humans who gave blood voluntarily. The work suited her, bridging the 2 worlds she now inhabited. Gerald and Owen Fletcher were serving 8 and 5 years respectively. The compulsion Ezra had placed ensured they'd never threaten her again. Even thinking her name brought waves of nausea and self-loathing, magic enforcing his command. Martha died on a Tuesday evening 6 months before, Nora holding her hand as she slipped away. Peaceful. No pain. Just an old woman closing her eyes and not opening them again. "I'm sorry," Ezra had said, holding Nora while she cried. "Don't be. She lived a full life. She got to meet her great-grandchildren through my cousins. She was happy at the end. That's all anyone can ask for. Winter arrived with snow dusting the city in white. Nora stood at the penthouse window, watching lights glitter below. Ezra joined her, 2 glasses of wine in hand. He still didn't drink, but the ritual comforted them both. "I've been thinking about transformation," Nora said without preamble. Ezra went very still. "And? I want it, eventually, but not yet." She turned to face him. "I want to work as a nurse for a few more years. Experience life as human while I still can. There's no rush, right? You've got centuries. We've got centuries," he corrected gently. "If that's what you choose. But Nora, transformation isn't something to do just to stay with me. You need to want immortality for yourself. I do. I want time to explore everything, to learn languages and see the world and understand what 400 years means." She took his hand. "But I also want to be human a little longer, to honor Martha's memory by living fully in the light before I choose darkness. That's wise. Will you still want me in 10 years? 20? I'll want you in 100, in 1,000. Ezra pulled her close. "I've spent 4 centuries existing. You've taught me to live again. That's not something that fades with time." They stood together, vampire and human, watching the city they protected. Outside, millions lived and died, unaware of the ancient creatures moving through shadows, unaware of the love story unfolding in the penthouse above. "Thank you," Nora whispered, "for saving me. Thank you for letting me." Ezra's lips brushed her hair. "For seeing past the monster to the man underneath. You were never a monster. Just lonely. Not anymore." Below them, the city breathed. Above them, stars wheeled through their eternal dance. And between them, something rare and precious took root. Love that transcended species, time, and every rule that said it shouldn't exist. The future stretched ahead, uncertain, but theirs. However long it lasted, whatever form it took, they'd face it together. A vampire king who'd learned to care again. A human woman who'd learned she was worth saving.